Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
Hey, everybody. It's Jared with your host with All Things Crime. Welcome to another episode. Appreciate all of you watching and listening and joining YouTube, Rumble, wherever you're hearing this. And where are we? Spotify, iHeart. Boy, it's all over the place. So appreciate everybody tuning in. And I also want to especially appreciate my guest today. His name's Clee Tilman. He's in central Pennsylvania. And this guy, I saw him, I want to say on LinkedIn. And you were doing a live podcast on LinkedIn and YouTube. He's got a podcast called Black and Blue. And I'll tell you, it's good stuff. He's also, man, Clee, what else do you do? I mean, you're, aside being, an active police officer and detective, you just got it all going on, man.
Thank you. I swear, I appreciate that. Thank you for having me on the show. I don't know where we find time to get things done, but it's a fun game. It's a very busy game, but it's we're moving the needle forward, so we're having a lot of fun getting the messages out there.
Oh, absolutely. If you're not busy, then there's just something wrong. Especially, I don't know, men. We have to be productive in so many different areas that, obviously the women do too. I mean, my wife is running ragged all the time, especially playing taxi for all of our kids. But yeah, it's amazing. I can't fathom just sitting around doing nothing. It just doesn't, I just get so bored, I'll watch a movie or two and during the week and then it just gets boring. I'm like, man, I got to go do something. And I'm it's obvious you're the same way. And so, hey, let's get into what started first. I'm assuming your police career started first, and then you got the idea of your podcast. So kind of tell us a little bit about your background and how things got started where you are now.
Sure, absolutely. And again, like I said, thank you for having me on the show, taking the time out for this interview. I truly appreciate it. And going back, I see the Ranger tab, so I have to go ahead and say Army leads the way. I originally enlisted. Right. Yeah. I was a Fort Bragg enlistee many years ago. Seems like a lifetime ago. I was a parachute rigger back in the day, so I had my fair share of jumps and parachutes and drop zones and jump masters and everything that comes with it. And
that's right. I had forgotten that that's another thing that I saw on LinkedIn that we had in common was service in the Army, man. So appreciate your service too, sir.
Yeah, likewise. I appreciate your service. It's the time of the year that's fun for it.
Right.
But then I became a police officer shortly after I got out of the Army itself. And I've always wanted to be a police officer. I'm a second generation police officer. And I knew since the age of 4, that's what I wanted to do. So I went in 100% head over heels, loving every moment of it. Been doing it since 2006. From 2006, I started with a smaller department, then got to a department I'm currently with now, where I got to do things such as school resource officer, being on the task force as an undercover narcotics officer, working patrol, managing platoons on patrol, and now with CI as a detective. It's just a wide gambit of wonderful things to do. And with that, I know that getting the message out there, knowing how we're portrayed and visualized in the media and on TV, I kind of wanted to counteract that and put out our own narrative to kind of be fair toward us in law enforcement and first responders, where I started doing a podcast back in 2020. I was podcasting before that, but I was focusing on law enforcement back in 2020, where I started the podcast Black and Blue. Black and Blue. We air weekly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And when we do, we interview individuals that are first responders and law enforcement officers, whether they're rookie, seasoned, or retiree. And when we interview them, we talk about their training, their experiences, and their publications. So you have a lot of fun getting those messages out there and learning different. Each week we have a new guest, and each week we have a different aspect that we share.
Nice, man. I'll tell you, that's 2020. I think it was 2021 when I got started with All Things Crime.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Well, COVID was kind of the reason that I got going.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting around after, the 2 weeks to slow the spread turned into 2 months, and it started getting, even worse. I'm like, geez, somehow I've got to reach my customers. And combine that with, as I've been going around with M-Vac Systems and learning not only law enforcement, but especially DNA, I realized that there are so few people that aren't intimately involved with the process that actually understand it, and what it really takes, especially for guys like you that are out there, beating the streets and actually what it's like to actually walk a beat and but even the process to actually solve a crime to me is what's the most fascinating. And there's just so few people that really understand that. And it's like, okay, so once 911 is called, the first officer responds and gets there, and they cordon off or do whatever they end up doing, and then detectives are called and CSIs are called and paramedics are called, and all these resources come into the case. Well, then what happens? And just kind of the whole process of putting together the puzzle that when you walk into a crime scene and you're looking at, maybe there's a homicide victim there, and you're looking at the victim, you're looking at the crime scene, you're looking at all these, what needs to be fingerprinted, what needs to be DNA collected, what needs to, what evidence goes back. It's like, man, putting that whole thing together, that's kind of what my goal is to help people understand each little step in there. And by interviewing, guys like you, I think my audience is getting a better idea of it. And, but you guys, each one of you guys brings a different perspective and a different view of it, a different approach. And I just love it. It's like, but ultimately, the one thing that I've found, all law enforcement are, number one, dedicated to solving cases, because, ultimately the victim is the focus, and the victim deserves justice. And you guys it's the dedication and loyalty to that is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we're in a service oriented profession, and finding the whodunit, and I'm glad you got to explain the different levels of trying to process and resolve and solve cases. It's not like it's perceived in the first 48 hours or any other TV program. There are multiple different levels on the actual crime happening. The patrol officer normally responding to that active or non-active event, getting the notes and figuring out, okay, like you said, if we're going to need medical assistance for any victims, processing, you've got to get CI out there for DNA, fingerprints, and figuring out all the way to the tail end when it goes in front of a judge with a district attorney, and you bad guy pleads guilty or not guilty, and potentially go in front of a jury of our peers and seeing what the outcome's going to be. That can be a long process. That can be anywhere from a month to a few years. I've seen it go I think the shortest amount of time where it went from that entire process was a month. The longest has been many, many years, unknown amount of years, because there's been a couple guys who are retired who get called back to have to come testify on the stand for things that they were doing while working.
All right. Yeah. Well, it's interesting with what I do with M-Vac Systems. Uh, we can crack into cases that are 50 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. In fact, the record that we have is getting DNA off of evidence that was 56 years old. So
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty cool. But so by then, geez, man, probably the detectives aren't even around anymore. So there's 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 pretty limited witnesses that you can call
Mhm.
on, when a case is 56 years old. But yeah, but I just, my hat goes off to all of you guys. Law enforcement in general is just, especially in today's day and age, it's so demonized, which
Yeah.
I just don't understand it. It's
Hmm.
one of those things that I'm trying to think of who I was talking to, but the the entire um, the entire profession is is held to account for the actions of an individual.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's weird. I think prior to George Floyd, the powder keg was kind of set. And
Hmm.
there's some specific politicians that really want that level of powder, but then
Yeah.
they had to have somebody to actually blame it on. And I
Mhm.
think the George Floyd incident really kicked it off.
Yeah.
And but it's sad because no other profession in the world is held to the same account.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so somebody screws up in Los Angeles, and then the Harrisburg PD, gets riots out there because
Mhm.
what happened in LA. It's like that. Okay, that just doesn't make sense at all.
Right. Right.
You know, I think the example that I used uh, earlier with a guest was, a doctor operates on the wrong leg, which has happened,
Hmm.
and removes a tendon from the left leg, and it should be the right leg, and
Yeah.
and yet nobody screams and yells and riots about the doctors.
Malpractice. Yeah.
They're just saying, well, that doctor needs to be fired. Well, for some reason though, all police are held in account to and they're held to blame for what somebody else did. It's just
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. There's just no logic to it.
No. No. It it amazes me as well. You talk about doctors and medical malpractice and things like that. Police officers, law enforcement is the only job that I'm aware of, at least right now. It may be changing, that we're basically recorded 24/7, no matter what's going on. And that's kind of a little unnerving, because mistakes do happen, and not trying to condone it. But I think actually the body cams are a beneficial thing. What started out being uh, area where we didn't know how we were going to evolve to, because we have to keep a recording, which is a system which is very expensive. Keep recordings, have it documented, have someone be able to manage it, and that's a job within itself. And especially when you're talking about defunding and limited funds and things, and trying to add this on was an amazing feat in itself. Um, a lot of departments were skeptical on getting the body cams, but then they turned out to be very beneficial, because if you review 90 to 95% of the incidents that happen on body cam, the officers exonerated. They did everything politely, appropriately. They took the actions that were appropriate for the situation. And some, even the officer could have ramped it up to another level, and you see them de-escalating, using the mental health and wellness, and de-escalating a situation that could have been taken, could have gone left instead of gone right. So
Oh
they've
yeah,
actually been beneficial. It's worked in our favor, in my personal opinion. But again, we're the only profession that is viewed microscopically, all the time, on every little incident. And we talk about how good cops hate nothing more than bad cops, and it's always the few bad cops that demonize the entire profession.
yeah. Well, that whole body cam thing. I remember when was that? Probably 10 years ago when that really started coming out.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think the origin. Well, I think that. the in-car cameras. I can't think of the name of them off the top of my head, where you had to put the microphone on and all your traffic stops were recorded, where it's kind of the
Right.
lead in to the body cam itself. The
Yeah.
body cam started coming about probably about 10 years ago, and it's now more mainstream, of course, as of 2020 and beyond.
Mm-hmm. Well, honestly, I thought, the politicians that were really pushing for that, they
Mm-hmm.
thought they were going to catch all these bad cops, and, all these traffic stops were going to be, they were going to just show them that, these cops are just pulling people over just for the sake of pulling people over. And they were racially profiling, and they were like, man, we're going to catch all these horrible cops and all these bad things that they do all the time. And then I think that's totally backfired on them. I love it, because it's like, you know what? Yeah, these guys are professionals. They're out there doing what they're supposed to be doing. And yeah, usually it's the person they're pulling over that turns out to be either a total jerk or an actual criminal.
Yeah.
And you know what? Once you get all that on tape, especially if you're just walking up, and I love the fact that it actually shows how dangerous like a car stop can be. And you see all these shows now where they've got actual footage. These officers are just walking up, and some guy is breaking the law somewhere. It's either speeding or rolling through a stop sign or something like that, and then next thing you know, it's a firefight, and it's just this just crazy. And it's like, yeah, you know what, this cop was being professional, and then all of a sudden the perpetrator whips out a weapon and starts firing at him. And it's hopefully, I think a lot of the population is really waking up to it. There's always going to be that certain few people that have a animosity toward police because they don't want to be held to account. And
Very
but
true.
in the back of my mind, I'm like, too bad. If you want to live in society, man, we have certain rules, and if you're not willing to obey those rules, then bad boys, here we go. They're gonna come get you, man. So we're gonna send Clee after him. That's what we're gonna do, man.
There we go.
Well, hey, Clee.
I'm sorry.
Nope.
Oh, I was going to say, you send me after him. I'm going to highlight the guys on the show for doing a commendable job.
Yeah. You ever able to use your own body footage?
For the show itself, my podcast? Or for
somewhere. I mean, you got to, I know your podcast is a little different. We'll get into that later, but I just think that being able to do some kind of if you could ever get a hold of that body footage, in some particular case, you could do like a reaction video on your own reactions. What do you think about
that? I think, well, technically we do in roll call in-house, we during debriefings, we go through some good ones, some body cams, some footage that I don't want to say aren't good, that could have been done a little differently. So the debriefings itself it's wonderful in training scenarios, because you don't actually have to make up something. You don't have to actually come up with something on a dry erase board and go through squiggly lines. You can actually watch real people that we work with go through a situation or scenario, and whatever decisions they made in real time, you go with it. And then you can Monday morning quarterback it, for lack of a better term, go back and say, okay, if we didn't do this, we could have done this, and here's why. Or this is why we shouldn't have pulled up to the domestic at this level. You could have stopped at maybe at one or two houses down, and here's why. And then you can constructively critique the incident and learn from it. So yes, the body cams are good to watch our very own, or to watch other departments as well, just to see how other departments react to certain situations that our department may not be used to.
It's watching game film, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point.
Yeah, I mean, if the professional athletes do it, I mean, what better way to learn than real life scenarios? That's we did it in the military. I mean, there's all sorts of training videos and stuff that we'd watch. Of course, back when we were in there, they were pretty cheesy. Hopefully they've gotten better by now. But you know, it's a process, and
Mhm.
it's awesome to hear you say that, because um, what better way to learn, and then watching what actually happened, and you know,
Mhm.
hopefully, um, you know, you don't ever get into those, uh, especially the ones that are really bad, where you have you know, an officer down. But
Yeah, yeah.
um, even on those, as hard as they would be to watch, I'm sure there's a huge number of, you know, learning experiences that are in there that you can just watch it in real time
Mhm.
and say, this is what the officer chose to do, and you know, unfortunately, that was the wrong choice. So
Mhm.
um, no, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
So out of all the times that you've been out on the street, you know, I love to get experiences from you guys.
Mhm.
Is there anything in particular that stands out? You're like, man, this was a pivotal point in my career.
Oh man, there's been a few, of course. 18 years in the game total. So I honestly I probably forgot more incidents than I can remember now that I'm an old guy in the game. But some in particular, one was a prostitution detail where it came in as a prostitution, where eventually we found out it was how can I put it? And I don't want to use too many police jargon code. Put it in layman terms. The prostitute was an older woman. She also had, I believe, her daughter or a family member with her. Her daughter was a juvenile who had her boyfriend with her as well, who was another juvenile runaway. And they were from another county, so no one recognized them at first until we put them, started running names, found them in NCIC. Of course, with prostitution, it's running hand in hand with drugs and narcotics. So it's at one of our local hotels that are you're seeing a lot of activity. Cars are in for a couple seconds and cars leave out. So more than likely some sort of transactions going on that's illegal. A lot of multiple cars, multiple times in the day for a long period of time. Long story short, the runaway juvenile male turns out to have passed away in his sleep while staying at this hotel from an overdose. And when we get there, I mean the individuals who do call us are doing CPR on him, but by the time we get there, you can obviously tell it's he's already gone. He's been gone for a while, and then the investigation starts from there, and you start backtracking, and you're thinking this kid was so young, and I, being an SRO, knowing kids this same age and the potential for them to go down the slippery slope, it was a trigger. Like, wow, like I mean, these kind of things happen, but to actually see it and be involved with it firsthand is kind of an eye-opening experience in a not so positive way. And I remember I was a football coach for a number of years as well. So having hands-on interactions with kids that age, I remember I'd be so hard on them because if they were showing up to practice late, if they weren't getting their grades correct, if my own family, if they weren't cleaning their room appropriately and things like that, and actually seeing, am I being hard on them because they're not listening, or am I being hard on them because I don't want them to fall down this slippery slope and end up like this juvenile, where you kind of start wondering where in his life did things start going wrong. And that case evolved to where it was multi county investigation, leading from prostitution sting, of course, and drug stings, and getting the juveniles that were involved into some sort of program and get them involved with proper state affiliations and agencies that would hopefully correct up a lot of years of inappropriate behaviors that happened with them, for putting it lightly.
Yeah. So how old was this kid?
Kid was 13 years old.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
13 years old, and he passes away from an overdose.
Yep. Fentanyl,
Wow.
using heroin.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, I've got twins that are 14, and
Mhm.
the youngest is 12, almost 13. So, wow, that hits home.
Yeah,
That's scary, to think
yeah,
that
very
some
much.
kid would be, because you got to wonder at what junction they start going sideways, and it had to be 9, 10 years old.
Yeah.
And, it's as sad as it is. A large part of that is because, there's usually only one parent in the house, and,
Mhm.
um, that one parent is just in survival mode and just
Mhm.
trying to physically provide, and a lot of times they just don't have enough time and resources to provide for the children in a way
Mhm.
that would help them stay on the right path. And
Mhm.
and it just goes downhill from there. That is a sad. Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
um well, hopefully, especially as a resource officer, you always, this is kind of a side note, but the resource officers, to me, um, when I first started hearing about it, I'm like, oh man, that's got to be like the bottom of the barrel type cops that are, they don't have anything better to do, and or maybe they can't pass the physical test, and so they stick them in the schools. But in
Mhm.
reality, I'll tell you what, the SROs are such a critical part of society, because not only do
Mhm.
they keep the school as safe as they possibly can, just by having a presence there, but
Mhm.
the influence that they can do, like,
Mhm.
um one of my twins, the kid, physically, the kid's a freak. Uh he loves doing competitions with his friends, and he said, yeah, in front of the school resource officer, one day he did 1,000 push-ups. And it's like, he just got tired of his friends beating his record. It was in the 200s, and then he's like, all right, screw this, I'm gonna just blow it out. And but the fact that he was hanging out with this school resource officer,
Mhm.
and this officer is making an influence on him, and just showing him that, yeah, cops can be your friends,
Mhm.
and they can also be, like you said, a resource. There's a reason that they're named that way. And I I I'm excited. I love it that I know that there's an armed officer in
Mhm.
that school. He's making friends with the kids, and
Mhm.
but he's also, I'm sure, and I know mine is a he. Um, he's also basically just saying, hey, um, we're here, but
Yeah.
we're here to help you, keep you safe, but we're also here to help you stay on the right path.
Mhm.
And what better way than having a basically an alpha male right there, as an example. And that's,
Leading the way. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
what age were you when you were an SRO? What age were you with?
So when I was in SRO, we only had one for the entire school district itself, which we go from kindergarten all the way up till 12th grade. So the SRO handles each school. They sporadically go by, in theory, uh, go by each of the schools throughout their shift. Some days that happens, other days that does not. I was an SRO early in my career with my department, which was back in 2011. So it's been a few years since then. The current SRO now, they've been there for a few years. They're extreme. The SRO program is highly needed. I know they are extremely busy. Um, Nonstop all day long with their shift, and they are the link. They're the connection between, if there's an issue with a runaway juvenile that happened on patrol after the hours of school. By the time the SRO comes in, the SRO can check the attendance. The SRO can get a more family dynamics on the background of this juvenile. The SRO may even know the juvenile on a more personal level than we would on patrol. And then again, when you get to CI as a detective, you start getting cases, juvenile cases, and you have no idea who these juveniles are, especially if they're more middle school age, which is 12 to 14.
Mhm.
You have no idea who they are, what their family situation is. And again, the SRO comes in handy for those investigations, piecing little small things together, knowing if the SRO does know the juvenile, they know what clique they're in, where they hang out, what sports they play, what activities they're involved in, what bus they take. So many different things that are there. It's a connector, and that's so important. The devil's in the detail, and I think the SRO is basically the devil of the detail for law enforcement. That is the glue that holds it all together.
Oh yeah. Well, like I said, I used to view him just kind of, I mean, I was this arrogant Army Ranger type. And I'm like, yeah, if you're not kicking down doors, then what good are you? Kind of. But now that I've gotten a little older and wiser, I look at these guys and I'm like, I can't say how much I appreciate them, especially with teenage boys.
Yeah.
And boys are just I've had 2 girls and then followed that with 3 boys. And the 2 girls were just angels compared to what I'm going through now. It's like, I love my boys, but holy cow, man, it's just different. And they have to have positive male role models.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they can just go sideways really fast. And especially right around that puberty age when they start, just naturally. I actually heard a psychologist that say it's hardwired into, especially boys, but all kids are hardwired to start pushing away from their parents right around the age of 13.
Yeah.
And that's just I think that goes all the way back to the caveman days, basically, just to start pushing away from the family. Otherwise they would just stay in the same cave their whole lives. And then, society would never get created. And so that hardwire, I think most people just don't understand it because, when kids start pushing away, the first reaction, especially for the moms, is like, oh no, come back.
Yeah.
You're my baby and you got to stay around. But, the teenage years is when they start learning how to be men and, women, especially. And, if they don't have good guidance and good morals instilled in them by then, boy, it's rough. So
yeah. And congratulations to your son on that 1,000 push-ups. I mean, I destroy the record himself. Way to go. Kudos.
Yeah, I think that record's going to stand for a while. When he first came home, he was like, yeah, the day before, a couple days before, he had said, yeah, I set the record, and then my friend beat it, and then it just started escalating, went from like 100 to 150 to 100 200, and he finally just said, screw it, I'm just gonna blow this thing out. And came home one day and he said, yeah, I did, I've got the record now, it's 1,000. And I was like, come on, that's not real. And he goes, no, I did it all in front of the school resource officer, and he's the one that counted them. So I was like, geez, criminy, that's insane. So yeah, but like I said, the kid's a freak. He was at 3 years old. He was crawling up the door frames and just with his fingertips, and I was like, okay, this kid's, if he doesn't end up some kind of a rock climbing career, he's gonna miss his calling in life. But yeah, kids are awesome, man. I love them.
Yeah.
There's a reason that I have gray hair, and
trust me, me too.
Yeah, right. It's but that's just because we love them and we care about them, and we want them to have a good, fulfilling life. And without the effort up front, boy, it's harder to correct them on the backside. So
100%.
Well, Clee, let's talk about your podcast for a bit. That's
sure.
Especially during your live stream, you stopped a few times and you had some commercials in there. So describe some of those commercials.
Yes. So the commercials I have is a character I created, which is Sergeant Be Safe. Sergeant Be Safe is a police officer along with his partner, Captain Chaos. They get into situations during the cartoon skit, which they have to solve the problem. And in solving the problem, they always give some sort of safety tip. And safety tips can be anywhere from not stopping in the roadway, not running the stop sign during a school bus at the beginning of the school year. You have to remind drivers out there. Lately, they've been reminding businesses and people with automobiles to lock their vehicles because now this is the time of year again where theft from autos are rising, and it's not anything coming from it's not people breaking into vehicles per se by you causing damage. They're getting into vehicles because they're left unlocked. So therefore, creating a cartoon with Sergeant Be Safe, Captain Chaos, and you got your bad guys, Rob You Blind, Treacherous Tony, Chance Wilder, to name a few. They're always getting into mischief, and Sergeant Be Safe and Captain Chaos have to catch them and give the safety tips for them. They're about 2-minute long skits. They're a lot of fun to do. The voiceovers are normally on duty or retired, I should say on duty, active or retired law enforcement officers. And I put their names in the credits because I appreciate them donating their time for a good cause.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. They're fun. So do you do the animations?
I do. I have an app that does the animation. It's 2D animation. It is rather cheesy, but it's a lot of fun to do. And getting the motions and the conversation down is somewhat challenging, but it's a lot of fun.
Nice. Well, when you make these safety videos and things, are you dispersing those, or are you just using them yourself?
They're available to watch on YouTube under the Sergeant Be Safe YouTube channel. They're also, I play them during like you said, the podcast as commercial breaks for Black and Blue. I try to keep it down to every half hour. Do a 2-minute commercial break. Starts off with a commercial as well, a video of that. But they're out there. If anyone wants to view them, they're available. There's a YouTube page, which I don't really keep up with. Shame on me. But I'm sorry, the Instagram page, which I don't really keep up with, but the YouTube page I do keep up with. All the videos are uploaded there.
Nice. Well, we'll make sure to include the links
Perfect.
in the show notes. Yeah, that's the funny thing is sometimes the cheesy ones are the ones that actually stick. They'll they may be as you're watching them, you're kind of like, oh man, what's the deal with this? When we're used to this 3D and all sorts of just the incredible animation that you see on Fortnite and some of these games. But you know what? I guarantee the kids just 30 seconds after they turn the Fortnite off, it's gone.
Yeah.
But maybe something like Sergeant Be Safe would stick with them a little bit. And
hopefully.
Yeah. No, I was really impressed when I saw that you were doing that as on top of your podcast, on top of being a police officer, and that's man, that just all adds up. You're a busy man, Clee.
Thank you. Just trying. It's a lot of fun, but it's important to get the word out in one way, form, or another.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you one other question about throughout your career, when you're hanging around just Thanksgiving and things like that, and all of your relatives are like, hey, tell us about a story, something that happened that maybe it's just tragic or maybe it's really funny, but something that people always want to hear at Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving story, or one that I get when I'm with the family. They want to hear more about the action adventure kind of stories. The ones that living the life that most people don't get to live. And that would be, I would say during my task force days, like you had mentioned, you like to have been the ranger, the kicking indoors and having fun. I remember those days as well. The task force, kind of flying under the radar, being under the books. We got to help out another county's undercover team because all their agents were burnt by this guy. When I say burnt, he recognized all of them. So if he saw their face, he would know that an investigation's going on. So they had to play the background, and they brought us in to continue this investigation. And I remember being at a Walmart in another county, and we're following this guy around, and we're in and out of cars, we're in and out of various stores, and we're watching this guy interact with various people. And it came to the point where we got the signal where we're going to move in. And normally you want a uniformed officer to move in so it doesn't look like it's a chaotic fight of just plainclothes officers with a bad guy fighting. It just doesn't, it's not a good situation for the public to see. So the plainclothes officer was actually at a different location. I guess wires got crossed and things didn't go right. So we got the move in signal and we're waiting and no one's moving in. And we got the move in signal and we're waiting and no one's moving in. And the last thing we wanted to do was have this bad guy make it to the car because it's a lot easier to walk up on someone and politely and peacefully take him into custody as opposed to getting into a car and potentially getting into a vehicle pursuit, which can cause damage, loss of life and property and things like that. We didn't want that to happen. So I'm sitting here watching. The signal goes twice. I don't see anyone moving in. I'm seeing the guy almost make it to his car, and I'm not seeing anyone moving in. So then, therefore, I'm still thinking I'm playing football, and I'm still thinking I'm young and agile. I run up to this guy. I say, "Hold on, hold on." I'm holding. I'm identifying myself. Please don't move. Please don't move. He's got the O factor going. And he takes off. And as he's taking off running, I remember I'm leaping over one car and going head first and tackling him to the ground. And we finally get him into custody. No one's hurt. He was actually like, you know what? Good game. I'm the bad guy. It's your job to catch me. You're the good guy. It's your job to investigate. So, we had to play each other's parts. Good game. It's a lot of fun. I didn't know in the process that I jammed one of my fingers into the cement while falling. So the next day when my finger was swollen and I couldn't bend it, I had to go back and talk to the commanding officer and say, hey, we helped out another county's task force, and therefore this happened. And I think I need to go sit to our doctor because I think I broke my finger. And so, needless to say, he wasn't too happy because the report was filed in another county, which I had to get a copy of that report to file in with the claim and go see our doctor. And we had a interesting conversation, but it turned out very good. But it was just one of the more happier, peaceful endings. One of the crazier stories that kind of took place that is able to be shared. It was a lot of fun to be in. It took all day. It was an all-day situation. It came down to 30 seconds of fun at the very end, and it was all from a miscommunication from where the patrol was to where we were, and they were saying they were going to move in. They're on the other intercom saying, "Where are we moving into? We don't see any action going on." It was a chaotic mess, but that always seems to happen often.
How many times does it actually, it's just semi-controlled chaos, but when you said the waiting all day for that 30 seconds of fun, boy, that reminded me of all my military days. How many months do we schedule and train for that one or 2 day op, in the back 40, and but that's the fun when you actually get to rappel out of the helicopters and
Mm-hmm.
and all that fun stuff. So, or, jump out of the airplane, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's, it's all good stuff. So, I was hoping when we first met that, maybe we had served on the same base at one point, but, my active duty career was only at Fort Campbell. So I got tired of it pretty quick. I was like, I just can't dredge through 20 years of this. There's just no way. Plus, I don't think my wife would have tolerated it. Honestly, she didn't enjoy being an Army wife too much, but there's a
I understand.
special people that can
Yeah.
actually do a full 20 years at that. Tell
Yeah.
you. So, all
Yeah.
right, brother.
And
Well, anything else that that comes to mind that you think the folks would be interested in?
again, I say again, always protect yourself. Always be kind to your neighbor. Lock your doors at night, vehicle and businesses. Make sure that we have the common ring cameras and um, lights. I can't think of the actual names. Motion sensor lights for businesses. Make sure that you guys are protecting your family, your property, and your businesses. So therefore, crimes of opportunity will be less and less because you're actually taking a more proactive stance and protecting yourself and your business and families. And
You know
again,
what?
Derek,
That
I thank you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I got to follow up with that because based on your experience,
Mm-hmm.
what percent of crimes do you think are targets of opportunity versus actually planned out? Because I just, my, and the reason I ask, because, you know, I think most people are actually good people. And
Mm-hmm.
then they'll see something that it's kind of like the little kid in the candy store or
Mm-hmm.
in a grocery store that, and this actually happened. When I was a little kid, I remember my older brother sitting in the back of the car, and all of a sudden he's eating a candy bar. And my parents were in the front, and I was like, "Hey, where, mom? Why do you get my brother a candy bar and you didn't get me one?" And she's like, "I didn't get your brother a candy bar." And so next thing you know, we're turning around and driving back to the store, and my dad's marching my brother in there to apologize to the store manager for him,
Mm-hmm.
helping himself to a candy bar. Well,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, that was the one day that I was glad I didn't have any candy.
I
'Cause
bet.
that for my brother, that was a bad day. But anyway, you know, he just, I think, I don't think he was old enough to really understand that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that you actually have to pay for that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he saw a candy bar. He's like, he wanted it, and so he grabbed it. Well,
Yeah.
I think there's a high percentage of crimes that are committed with kind of that same mindset,
Mm-hmm.
where basically, people look at something and they're saying, "Oh man, that car's unlocked," and there's a wallet right there. There's nobody around,
Yeah.
and just so they just open the car door and grab it really quick.
Yeah.
So, in your experience, what percent do you think is actually like that versus the guy that wakes up in the morning and says, "You know what, I'm going to go find some car to break into"?
In my experience, I would say 75 to maybe even 85% of crimes of theft and property damage or property crimes happen because they're crimes of opportunity. That it's a piece of property that no one's paying attention to, doesn't have the proper alarm system, doesn't have the proper locking system, is not secured properly, doesn't have the proper video cameras or anything like that, left unsecure, unlocked, just so many different things where the victim's like, wow, I never thought this would happen to me. I don't normally even lock these doors because no one's here. Things like that. It's a high percentage because it's available. If you take away the availability, a lot of those crimes, you'd see crime numbers drop significantly from my experience.
Yeah, I would think so.
Mm-hmm.
Just most people just aren't the career criminal type. I mean, they're just
Yeah.
normal people that get on, just trying to get on with their day and
Yeah.
make something happen. And you got to just kind of wonder, that very first one, oh, that they get away with it, and then they're like, oh, that was easy. So then they can get away with more, and that's just kind of escalates from there. But
Yeah.
yeah, just interesting, and obviously that very thing is why you make your Sergeant Be Safe videos. Hopefully that gets to the younger generation and the young kids, and just teach them to stay on the right path from the very beginning.
Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah.
All right, brother. Well, like I said, I'll make sure to include everything into the show notes so everybody can click on your links and things. But if you're
Appreciate it.
listening out there, make sure to tune in to Black and Blue with Clee Tilman, and definitely jump on his YouTube channel and check out all of his content. It's good stuff.
Thank you.
The couple that I've been able to see been really entertaining. So, Clee, I appreciate everything you do, man.
Likewise. Thank you for having me on the show, Jerry. You're a great guy. You're doing a great thing as well. And we got to get you on the Black and Blue podcast as well, and we'll share your viewpoints. Thank you for taking the time out. I appreciate it.
Oh, anytime. Yeah, you just name it, brother.
Thanks for joining us. Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.